Hi, welcome to Rock and Metal Invasion. My name is Steve. Coming up on the show today, I'm doing my top 10 hard rock metal albums from 1984. Of course, this follows on from the top 10 albums I've been doing for 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 1990, 91, and 1992. And after I did 1992, I did say I would go back and do 1984 and 1983, which will give me 10 years of top 10 hard rock metal albums from those 10 years. And of course, 83 to 92 pretty much covers that sort of what some people would call as that sort of what I call as well, really, is the hair metal period. A lot of hair metal bands coming out in that time, or bands that we would now put perhaps in that hair metal category coming out in that time. But it's, really what I would call hard rock, heavy metal bands, especially when we're talking about 1984. A lot of these bands would definitely be classifying themselves as heavy metal. Now we might say they're more hard rock, but either way, what I consider great music that came out in 1984. And of course, it's totally subjective, but this is just what I think. And of course, it's interesting that I'm doing my top 10 for 1984 right now, when of course we're at the end of 2024. And probably a lot of channels are doing their top 10 for 2024. But I thought here at Rock and Metal Invasion, let's go back to 1984, 40 years ago, and do the top 10 hard rock metal albums for 1984. And I'm going to have some honorable mentions as well. And like I said, it's just what I think, just my opinion. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. What's your top 10 for 1984? Great year for music. Such a great year that even a great album like this only can come in at number 10. And my number 10 is Judas Priest and Defenders of the Faith. Wow, what a great album. This is definitely heavy metal, isn't it? 80s heavy metal. They did change their sound a little bit on the follow-up Turbo, which I also like. But this one's fantastic. Free Will Burning, what a great opening song. It's one of Judas Priest's best songs. They often would start off their albums with a good fast-paced rocker, and that is one of their best. Jawbreaker, Rock Hard Ride Free, The Sentinel, those first four songs are just killer. Love Bites, I don't mind. There's a music video for that one. It's okay. And Some Heads Are Gonna Roll. I really like that one. So yeah, really solid album, really good stuff. And that's my number 10. Coming in at number 9, the debut Alita. No, sorry, not the debut, the second Alita Ford album, Dancing on the Edge. Of course, Alita Ford had previously been in the Runaways, and I think Alpha Blood was the debut. But she's working with Lance Quinn, who, of course, is probably most well known for working with Bon Jovi. So it does have a bit of a Lance Quinn production sound you can hear on it. A little bit more commercial, I think, than Out for Blood, but still heavier probably than the 2 or 3 follow-up albums that she does. I really like this. My favorite Lita Ford album, Lady Killer. That's my go-to song of this album. I think it's fantastic. But also Dancing on the Edge, Gotta Let Go, Fire in My Heart. Really good stuff. Hugh McDonald from Bon Jovi actually plays bass on this album. And Randy Costello is on drums. So some well-known guys in the band playing on this album, but this is really good stuff. So, like I said, my favorite Lita Ford album, so that comes in at number 9. Number 8, Scorpions, Love at First Sting. So this was a big hit for them. Of course, Rocky Like a Hurricane, such a classic song. But, Bad Boys Running Wild, the guitar playing on here is great. I love the production. It just sounds really good. Crossfire is really good. Even the ballads, actually, I'm not a big ballad guy, but I think Coming Home is fantastic. Still Loving You, really good as well. So yeah, Love at First Sting. That's going to come in at number 8 for me. And number 7, I got to be honest with you too. When I'm going through this, coming up with this top 10, it's pretty tight for some of these. Some of these on another day would be 7, and the other one would be 8. They'd swap over, they'd swap places quite a bit. So it's not been easy. And like I say, on another day, these could change just a little bit. But today, right now, at number 7, checking on that. Yep, number 7. We've got Crocus and the Blitz. Now, this might surprise people because I think for a lot of people, this was a bit of a disappointment after their previous album, which is maybe, Headhunter. They're probably their most critically acclaimed album, most successful album as well, I think. So they got a little bit more commercial. You can see they're even really sort of starting to get that hair metal type look, a lot more glam, well, a lot more sort of, they're more worried about their image a little bit more, aren't they? Production by Bruce Fairbairn, though, so it sounds fantastic. It is a bit inconsistent, but this is one of those unusual situations where, for me, the best songs are the last three songs. Rock the Nation, Hot Stuff, Ready to Rock. I love those songs. They just think they're fantastic. Could have done without Ballroom Blitz. I also like Our Love. There's a music video for that one. And Out of Control is pretty good. Midnight Maniac as well. It's not bad. So it's a bit up and down, but the songs I really like. So I remember just playing this so much back in the day, especially side two after Ballroom Blitz. Just loved it and still love those songs. So yeah, there we go. And I remember getting a VHS. I think it was called The Blitz, and it had a lot of these music videos on it. So and I was playing that quite a bit back in the day too. All right, so that I often always lose count when I do this. So just checking now, 10, 9, 8, 7. Yeah, so number 6. I've shown quite a few well-known bands, haven't I? And it's going to carry on because this one, number 6, is Van Halen and 1984. I mean, this is another huge album. Scorpions were a big album. This was even bigger, right? This is maybe I think Van Halen's most successful album. And interestingly enough, of course, the last album they did with David Lee Roth. So yeah, interesting too. They don't put any of the song titles on the back, but yeah, I mean, a lot of people know the classic songs. Jump, of course, Panama, Hot for Teacher. I really like Oh Wait. I think that's a good song. Yeah, just the guitar playing, of course, fantastic. Eddie Van Halen, amazing. So this is really a great album, and the fact that they broke up after it came out is, when they put out one of their best albums, certainly one of the best that they did, I think, with David Lee Roth. Yeah, but produced by Ted Templeman, of course. Yeah, I remember actually, a lot of these albums, I wasn't listening to them in 1984. I was more into pop music, only really even just getting into music at that time. And I do remember Jump. So this is one of those few albums where I knew at least one of the songs. I knew Jump. I thought it was a good song, and even now it's a good song, but it's definitely not one of my favorites off the album. Hot for Teacher, Panama, the two of the other singles, they're quite heavy, really. They're big two of my go-to songs. But yeah, all in all, actually, pretty consistent album. Every song's at least good. All right, so that was number 6. So we're into the top 5 now, and yeah, I mean, all of these albums are just fantastic albums. So, and a lot of these albums I've already talked about on my channel before, but here we go. This is number 5 for 1984, Survivor and Vital Signs. So probably would be my favorite Survivor album, which is interesting because it's not a heavy. I mean, not that Survivor had heavy albums, but it's not the heaviest album, but it is my favorite album. Just yeah, I mean, the first side in particular, fantastic. I Can't Hold Back, High on You, First Night, The Search Is Over, Broken Promises, really good songs. Like I said, it's not heavy, but I very melodic, but it really just got great hooks. Of course, I think this is the first one with Jimmy Jamison on lead vocals, and they did a song as well for the Karate Kid, which isn't on this album, The Moment of Truth. So if it had been on here as well, it was released around the same time this album came out. And in fact, on the Japanese press of this album, it does have it on there. The Moment of Truth, great song. It would have been even better if it had that on it. Popular Girl, that's one of the more heavier songs, hard rocking songs on it. That's really good. It's not the singer, not the song. That's fantastic. So yeah, I really like this one. Yeah, Vital Signs. That's going to come in from Survivor. That's going to be my number 5 selection. And changing pace just a little bit. Now this is more of a metal band. Of course, often this is a band that some people put in the hair metal category. Some people will say they're more in the heavy metal category. I think it really possibly depends what album you're talking about. But whether you want to call this hair metal or heavy metal, I think at the time they would have just been considered a heavy metal band. And that is Wasp. So their debut album, self-titled, of course it's WASP, it's an acronym. And I was talking to Dan from Off the Charts about this album a few days ago, and we talk about the acronyms. And of course, that's not where the acronyms end. You've got LOVE machine, you've got BAD. So there were quite a few happening with this band at that particular time. Of course, what's interesting too about this album is it doesn't have Animal, FUCK, like a beast on it. Supposedly, Capitol were a bit upset about putting, or worried, concerned about that being on the album. So ended up being released on Music for Nations as a sort of standalone single. It's a great song, one of my favorite Wasp songs. So it's a bit of a shame. If it had been on here, as I said to Dan when we were talking about this album a few days ago, if that had been on here, it would have been one of my favorite debut albums, and it probably would have been higher on this top 10 for 1984. But it's not on here, so I'm counting it. I mean, I know reissues and so forth, it's on there, but I don't count that. I'm counting the original release. So it's still got great songs. I Want to Be Somebody. What a good rocking song to kick it off. And then, the first single, I think it was, and there's a great music video, unforgettable music video. Used to play the heck out of that back in the day. LOVE machine. Sleeping in the Fire, that's a ballad, but that is a great ballad. And as I was saying, talking about really, it's just like a heavy metal band. Well, when you got songs that sound like The Tormentor and The Torture Never Stops, that's real early mid 80s heavy metal, classic heavy metal, really. Produced by Blakey Lawless and Mike Varney, of course. So Mike Varney, I think he's more associated with Shrapnel Records, I think. But he comes in to produce with Blakey on this one. And you got Chris Holmes, of course. There he is on guitar. I mean, I could talk about this album for quite some time. Great album. And that is my number 5, is it? Is it? Am I saying no? No, it's my number 4. Great. Excellent. My number 4. And some people might be surprised that it's only at number 4. It is Wasp are one of my favorite bands. I do like that album, but they've just got so many other albums that I like even more. But and we're talking 1984, so there's actually so many other great, well, not many more albums, but there are some albums that were even better than that. All right, so let's get into our top 3 now. So it's top 3. So this might surprise someone or somebody or whoever's watching. This might surprise you. Knights of the New Thunder by TNT. This is my number 3 album. I love this album. Now, in theory, it's not their debut. They put out an album prior to this. It had, I think it had some of these songs on it, but it was not. It was sung in their home language. They're a Norwegian band, and but they bring in Tony Harnell for this album, and so he's singing it in English. But the guitar player Ronnie Latecro, he is like just firing on all cylinders on this album. He just sounds amazing. I love the guitar work on this album, especially this is 1984, and I got this when I was just starting to get into sort of hard rock and heavy metal, and I love this. And now when I play it, it's like every song is just for me fantastic. It's one of those, every song is either good or great. Talking of acronyms, USA is on this album, and that's probably one of my favorites. But like I say, I like them all really. 7Cs, the song that opens it up, that's another real solid favorite of mine. Great song. They never, I think, got as good as this ever again. The next album had some good songs, but it was a lot more inconsistent. And then after that, it was less good. It was more songs I didn't like than I did like, unfortunately. But this one is just pretty much every song is great to good. So I love this one. So it's going to be my number 3, TNT, Knights of the New Thunder. If you haven't heard it, check it out. All right, and now we're down to the final 2, and then I'm going to have some honorable mentions as well. So coming in at number 2, this person needs no introduction. Ronnie James Dio, The Last in Line, classic album. What a great string of albums he put out in the 80s. Again, this would be one of my first sort of bands that I got into when I was getting into hard rock and heavy metal. Once I'm not sure what would have come first, but once I discovered Dio, I was just all in on Dio. And of course, the follow-up to Holy Diver, which was a great album. This is also a great album, really great follow-up. We Rock, great heavy rocker to start it off. Last in Line, I just love the way, a little bit similar to Holy Dive. It sort of starts off slow and then really kicks in. A bit of a underrated song, One Night in the City. It doesn't get talked about very much, but that's one of my favorite Dio songs. And that's the last song on side one. And a little bit like Don't Talk to Strangers, which is the last song on side one of Holy Diver. That's probably my favorite song on that album. And One Night in the City might be my favorite song on this album. I really love it. Side two is not as strong for me, but still good, solid, good songs on there. But yeah, and I Speed at Night, that's a good fast-paced rocker. I really like that one. But yeah, so this is just good stuff. And of course, Dio, amazing vocalist, sounds so good. You got Vivian Campbell on guitar. Yeah, just fantastic. So yeah, that's going to be my number two. And my number one is, and this kind of surprised me, but I when I was weighing everything up, I thought actually I still really like this album. So it's the debut Bon Jovi album. So I know there's probably some people watching like are not big Bon Jovi fans, but for me, those first three Bon Jovi albums are just yeah, essential listening, and albums that I still play to this day, enjoy still playing. Some of those albums are better than others, and even New Jersey and Keep the Faith have some good songs as well. Of course, after that it gets not so great. But yeah, I love this album. I was talking again. This one came up when I was talking to Dan a few days ago when we were doing our favorite debut albums, and I think this one might have come in at maybe it came in at number three, but it's number one for 1984. Roulette, been one of my favorite Bon Jovi songs. A bit of an underrated one. I really like that. Breakout, also really good. Opens up side two. Runaway, of course, was a bit of a hit, but Burning for Love, Come Back, Get Ready. They all rock quite hard. There's not many ballads on here. I mean, Love Lies, definitely, and She Don't Know Me, which is actually a song that Bon Jovi did not write. And this was produced by Lance Quinn as well, who I talked about before, who produced Leader Ford. So yeah, after the albums one and two, they then switched producer and go to Bruce Fairbairn, of course, who had produced the Crocus album that I showed earlier. And then they just blew up big time, didn't they? And of course, they had Desmond Child come in to do songwriting. But I do think to myself, would Slippery When Wet have been as big and successful if they'd had Lance Quinn producing it? I kind of think probably not, although, a great song is a great song, and I don't have a massive issue with Lance Quinn as a producer. Maybe Bruce Fairbairn knows just that little bit, just gets that little bit extra polish, just makes it just that little bit better, perhaps. Anyway, that is what happened. They moved on to Bruce Fairbairn and blew up big time. And yeah, but and Slippery When Wet's a great album, but I love the debut. So that's my number one from 1984. But it's a bit of a mix there. There's obviously there's hard rock, but you've got some heavier bands in there as well. Like Wasp and Judas Priest. So it really covers, I think, what I was into. And I wasn't listening to it in '84. I was only discovering these bands in the sort of mid to late '80s. So I was sort of going back and finding out about them later on. But yeah, so there we go. So that's my top 10 for 1984 hard rock and heavy metal albums from 1984. I'll finish off with some albums that came close and very close to making the top 10, but of course I can only choose 10. So here are some honorable mentions, just in case you're thinking, "What? Did you forget that one?" So this will at least eliminate the ideas that I didn't forget them. They were considered. I may have forgotten something. So again, put it in the comments if you think I may have forgotten one, or just one that you think should be in the top 10, or what is your top 10? Let me know. But before we finish up, here's my honorable mentions. Whitesnake, slide it in. Of course, this is the 35th anniversary edition, so it's 2 LPs. But yeah, I mean, the title track's great. Slow and Easy, fantastic. Standing in the Shadow, fantastic. Hungry for Love, of course, John Sykes is on guitar for this one. Di'Anno, I really like this album. I know it's nothing like what he did with Iron Maiden, but I actually really like it. Yeah, and I've talked about it a bit recently. when I did my tribute to Paul Diano. I think it's a good album. Now, this is an album I don't think I've ever shown on my channel or even talked about. Um, but Bryan Adams and Reckless. So I was really into this album in 1984 when it. So I'm actually of all the albums. This is one I was actually listening to in real time because it was the more pop rock kind of stuff that I was into in '84. So this may even be the album that I got in '84 because this is like not in great condition because I think I've had it for 40 years. One of the first albums I ever bought. One Night Love Affair. I mean, gosh, there's so many singles of this, but yeah, Run to You. And that was the song when I heard. I thought I've got to check this out. I love that. So, and I still love that song now. You know, Kids Want to Rock. That's a great rocker. And the song that he does with that Bryan Adams does with Tina Turner, It's Only Love. I think that's a fantastic song. And there's also, of course, the title song, Reckless, didn't even make the album, but Loverboy did a version of it. It's on one of their albums, but it's called Dangerous. But that's a really good song. Yeah, it's a good album. I don't play it much these days, but it's a bit of a shame because I then was super excited about Bryan Adams, and then when the next album came out, it had In the Heat of the Night, which I thought was a great song. The rest of the album it didn't really do much for me, so I was a bit disappointed. And then, of course, I've got more into by that stage, I was starting to get into the hard rock and heavy metal stuff. So Bryan Adams really didn't really get on my playlist too much after that. But yeah, that album is really good. And actually, I've checked out his albums prior to what's this album called? Reckless. Yeah, prior to Reckless, I've checked out and even got some of his previous albums. There's some good songs on there as well. And of course, he was a really good songwriter too. With him and Jim Vallance, writing songs for other artists. A lot of the, some hard rock bands that are in my collection. Of course, Kiss being one of the famous bands that Jim Vallance and Bryan Adams have written for. But they come up. I see them from time to time in other bands that I have in my collection. All right, now this one was pretty close. Y&T and Rock We Trust. This is a really good album. Of course, Y&T, very consistent band. Yeah, all the stuff they put out in the '80s, really good. But yeah, didn't quite make the top 10. But yeah, some really good songs on there. And Dokken, Tooth and Nail. I don't think this was as good as I think they got better. Next two albums much better, but I do really like Into the Fire. I think that's such a good song. Love that song. Yeah, didn't make my top 10. Stone Fury. I love this. This is really good. Again, this is Lenny Wolf, but this is Lenny Wolf before Kingdom Come. And Break Down the Wall. That's a song that's worth checking out. Really good. So yeah, there's Lenny Wolf there. Of course, he goes on to become a member of Kingdom Come, a band who I consider better than Led Zeppelin. I've almost got to. That's my thing. I've got to almost say now every time I talk about Kingdom Come. But yeah, also Bruce Gowdy. That's in there. He's quite well known. They did two albums, and then Lenny Wolf goes on to form Kingdom Come. But yeah, it's a good album. Both albums are good. Kiss, Animalized. Now, Kiss was so prolific in the '80s. They put out an album almost every year, didn't they? And this was a very solid album, I think. Yeah, I've Had Enough, Into the Fire. That's one of my go-to '80s Kiss songs. I really like that one. But also Thrills in the Night. That's a good one. I like that one. I think at this point, people have sort of thought maybe Gene wasn't, as involved with Kiss or as engaged with Kiss as he had been. And, Paul Stanley was sort of doing a lot more of the work. Gene's sort of going off into movies a little bit. But, yeah, so I don't think Gene's songs are so great on here. Paul's got Heaven's on Fire, which is a bit of a hit. That's okay. It's a pretty good song. And, of course, it's the album, the one and done album for Mark St. John, the only album he did. But yeah, Kiss, Animalize. And my last honorable mention, because I've got to mention this one because people were thinking, maybe I forgot it. No, I didn't. It's Rat and Out of the Cellar. Yeah, for me, it's good, but it doesn't break into the top 10. I do like this album, but yeah, it didn't quite make it into the top 10. It's probably really close, probably 11 or 12. But yeah, Wanted Man's fantastic, and Lack of Communication That's probably my favorite track off the album. Back for More, of course, that was on their debut EP. Round and Round was the big hit. The Morning After, good songs. Some good heavy songs on here. Production, of course, is for 1984. It sounds great. This is the first production that, maybe one of the first that Beau Hill does for Atlantic, and the first one he does anyway with Rat. And that's my honorable mention. But yeah, I much prefer Invasion of Your Privacy. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. But Out of the Cellar, good album, but doesn't make the top 10. All right, well, that's it. So that's my top 10 for 1984 hard rock heavy metal albums. Let me know what might make your top 10. Like I said, yeah, if you can put your top 10 in the comments if you feel like it, or just if you want to make some comments about the albums that I have selected, let me know. Again, it's just it's purely subjective, just what I think. And like I also said, on another day, it could change a little bit. But here's my top 10. There's my honorable mentions. And yeah, that is my show. It is actually Christmas Day here in New Zealand. So Merry Christmas. If you're watching it around Christmas time, hope you've had a great Christmas and hope you have a great New Year's. All right, that's it for this week. If you like this type of content and you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, and I'll catch you next time. All right, see ya.